Okay, so good morning, and I am with Luke. Good morning, Luke.
Morning.
Morning. Um, so this is the Socratic seminar for the politics of food, and we're hoping somebody else joins us, but if not, it's just Luke and myself, and we'll have a nice conversation about these articles that you read. Let me go through what the rules are just so that, Luke, you know, and anybody else coming in, they can see this. Obviously, we don't need to raise hands here. We're just having a conversation, but you can take notes. And there are some people who feel very shy about this. So we also have the chat box option that's in Google Hangouts if you don't want to say anything. But since it's just you and me, I hope you'll be talking to me, Luke.
Yeah.
And it's designed to help you discuss the issue. So what you want to do is have those articles in front of you and be sure to go to specific paragraph numbers of where evidence is, what you're referring to. And that way people listening to this recording will be able to find those resources as well. And we want to disagree. We want to hear counter arguments. We want to be devil's advocates. We want to truly get to the nuts and bolts of this issue. So, it's all right to disagree. I know both Mr. Short and myself, we're not looking for specific answers. We're looking with how you formulate those answers. So it's okay to disagree. So this was the first question that was on the discussion board, was with which author do you agree with the most and why? Who has the most? Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt you there. The author I agree with the most is the final article, J. Rayner. The reason I believe that is because, now granted, these are older articles. This one's from 2010, but the way he explained it and how they were having they could have been facing a food shortage. Industrialization of the food industry is a way to counteract that, because it's an easier way for people to afford good quality, cheap food instead of the people who are able to afford organic foods, which cost more and are harder to get.
Good. Okay. I'm glad you said it, but I'm also I wouldn't say surprised so much. When I was looking at the boards, very few Rayners came up, at least on my boards. I can't see the discussion boards for Mr. Short's class, but Rayner was very rarely mentioned. Here's what somebody else wrote. I believe that Barboza was most agreeable because he used a lot of references from different sources. I believe he used more than the other authors. He was easy to follow along and was very persuasive. Not many people look towards children's television or even toys being a conflict in their diet, and he pointed out things that many people would not regularly notice. I don't agree with him that it's influencing just children, and then the children confront the parents about the food they want. Parents see these unhealthy foods also and just get them to satisfy their children without seeing the effects it is having on their children's health. What would you say in response to that?
I say in response to that, I agree. It was a good article. It had a lot of good points, but the household I live in, it's very healthy eating. So, and where I live up here in the valley, above you guys, there's not a lot of places like this. We don't really do advertising. All our food's healthy up here, and the school makes us all very aware that junk food and fast food stuff isn't healthy for us. They serve us healthy meals and all that other stuff.
Oh, cool. So you don't have like what other schools have. I knew when I worked at North, they would sell pizza slices, and they would say that it was healthy because they were selling it on whole wheat dough. But you still had all the cheese and the pepperoni, and it would just drip with grease. You don't have that up there?
They do, but they're very small little pizzas, and they're not really greasy. They're like low fat, whole grain things that are more like a whole wheat loaf of bread with some cheese on it.
Ah, it doesn't sound real tasty.
No, it's not.
Okay, but
Every once in a while, for some classes, they have a pizza sale to raise money, but that's very few and far between. So,
and that's where they go outside and buy the kitchen made pizzas, right? At a regular pizza place, or do they?
Yeah, they'll go down to one of the. They'll go to one of the local pizza shops and they'll bring them up.
Okay, good. Okay, here's one that agreed with Barry. I would have to agree with our first author, Wendell Berry, as someone who is very much into health and fitness. I love the way he exposed our public health system. He appeals both emotionally, like the comment about the calf in a box, and logically, using statistics and facts. Barboza's, if you pitch it, includes the most logical and emotional arguments. With his balance of statistics and interviews with parents, he definitely knows how to catch the reader's attention. When discussing America's health as a whole, it's important to bring up exercise as well as diet. How inactive America is as a whole plays a big factor in our overall health. Barry also fails to mention how unrealistic it is that people can afford organic, grass-fed, non-GMO foods.
Yeah, that is true. It is very hard for people to afford organic, grass-fed GMO foods. And where it comes into exercise as well, up here, it's a very big problem. When I was in PE, I'm out of it now, but when I was in it, there was half my class that when we had to run miles and stuff, they wouldn't do anything. They'd just sit there or walk. So exercise is a major factor when it comes to America's health. So if you have a balanced diet of eating right and you exercise at least once or twice a week, it can have a big effect on you.
Okay. Good morning, Mr. Short. I see you have joined us. At least his little blue icon has.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah.
we can. Good.
Okay, great.
Now,
Yes.
now we're getting more people in the conversation. That's good. So Luke is with us. So,
Hi, Luke.
Hey.
Okay. Now, I don't know if you were, when you jumped in, Mr. Short, but Luke actually said that the one that was most convincing for him was Rayner. Now, Luke, can you see why Rayner may not have been favored among the others, or do you understand? What's your take on that? Why were you one of the minority when it comes to Rayner's article?
Well, I can understand that most people would be against him because all the other articles say that industrialization of the food industry, it's not healthy for the animals. The food quality isn't as good as other stuff like organic, grass-fed, GMO, non-GMO stuff. But the reason I agreed with Jay Rayner the most is because your average working American family don't have the money to afford all the organic stuff, because I'm not sure what it is, the actual pension, but it's somewhere around 30 to 40,000, and that's not the most money to afford stuff like that with, because you got your bills and that stuff. So that's why I agreed with him the most. And when it comes down to the subject of food shortages in his article, I agreed with him because the easiest way to avoid that is by industrialization of the food industry, because it's able to produce a better quality, cheap food than organic food is. Now, organic food is healthier for you, but it's not able to be grown or raised on the same scale. So it's harder to raise more. It also costs more. So that's why I believe that I agreed with Jay Rayner.
Okay. Let me see. So, was there any evidence from any of the articles that changed your perspective on food?
Yes, there is. And it was one of the major points was in the article When a Crop Becomes King by Michael Pollan about the corn. The one part that really hit home with me was in paragraph 4 when it says, one need look no further than the $190 billion farm bill that President Bush signed. Now, granted, this is an older article because Bush hasn't been president for quite some time, but
Right.
the idea that we spent $190 billion just on a single crop is shocking to me.
Mm-hmm. So, how has this changed your perspective? Are you going to do something differently? Do you have a different look on certain foods? How have you changed?
Yeah, I do. Especially when it comes to high fructose corn syrups and just corn syrups on their own. I don't look at them the same because I realize that now when abused too much, I did some research looking into it. I believe it's about 1,500 pounds that the average American eats of corn, and whether it's processed or modified into corn syrups and stuff like that or sweeteners, the average American eats 1,500 pounds of corn over the total of a year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a staggering number just for how much they eat. But I'm not sure the exact number, but it was like 314 billion pounds or tons, one of the two. And the U.S. of corn production worldwide, and the U.S. uses 80% of that. So that it really shocked me at how much we use corn and we don't see it. And like the artificial sweeteners like Splenda and stuff like that, that's what it's used in. And it's just, or the not the maple syrup, but kind of the corn syrup syrups for pancakes and stuff like that. That's where I most commonly see it.
Right.
And I try to stay away from that stuff because it's not very good for you. But it's just shocking how much we actually use.
Now let's bring back Rayner.
All right.
What is Rayner going to say to pollen? Is this pollen or berry? You're all mixed.
About the
Crop.
the crop becomes king.
Becomes king. Yeah, that was
Yeah, that's pollen.
pollen. Thank you. Okay. All right. So the two of them are in a room together at a party, and they're standing over, let's say, a bowl of Doritos, which is just loaded with high corn fructose syrup. That's how you can start campfires with. And they're having this debate because on the one hand, you have Pollen who is saying, look at all this corn, the corn production, and it really isn't good for us. So what is Rayner going to say?
Pardon, could you please restate that your mic was cutting out again, or it's just my internet connection up here?
Rayner and Pollen.
Yeah.
How is Rayner going to respond to Pollen when he's talking about, there all of this overproduction of corn is leading to unhealthy Americans? What would Rayner's response be?
Well, I believe he would respond by saying, if he had done his research, that the real health problem that is caused by corn is when it's modified. But when it's corn just on itself, just regular corn that's been harvested and boiled or barbecued like some people do, it's actually much healthier for you. So even if it is mass produced on an industrial scale, corn, depending on how you use it, can either be very healthy for you because it has a vitamin in it that helps prevent cancer, I believe heart cancer, and their heart disease. But when it's processed and to turn into corn syrups or high fructose corn syrups or artificial sweeteners, it can have a damaging effect on you. So it really just depends on how it's been processed and grown.
What kinds of foods are using that high corn fructose syrup, that high fructose corn syrup? I can never get those words in the right order. What kinds of foods use those?
The most common one I see, it's not really food, is the fake syrups for pancakes and waffles. That's the one I see most commonly. Also, as I said earlier, artificial sweeteners, candy bars, depends on the brand, or it really just varies from food to food. I haven't gone to the local supermarket up here and really looked at all the bags of stuff, but you just see it. Also, vegetable oil, not vegetable oil, but corn oil, stuff like that. It's used everywhere, and I believe in some places in the country they're looking at turning corn into a form of fuel to burn for cars.
Mm-hmm.
So it's really just it's the way that it's been processed and what foods it's in. Now, the foods that are naturally unhealthier, you're more likely to find it in them, like as you said, Doritos, I believe earlier, or also where it's also really used is dog food, like cornmeal. That's a big problem that you have to worry about if you want your dog to eat right, or your cats, or any animals really. But it depends on the brand and the quality of the food. So if it's a lower quality of food, it's or syrup or sweetener, you're more likely to find stuff like corn oil or high fructose corn syrup in the food product.
Okay. I think the point I was trying to get at with that is Rayner's argument. Now, that of course is in Britain.
Yeah.
Would you say that Britain and the United States may be facing the same issues, or was it a mistake to put in this module the Rayner article?
It varies. Now, when the heat wave hit here in California this year after our winter, a lot of cattle weren't used to it, so we had quite a few cattle die off, which rose in an increase in beef products and milk to the point where milk was more than a gallon of gas.
Right.
But when normally here in the United States, we don't have to worry about food shortages because we have such a big scale of food growing here alone in California, especially down in the Central Valley, that we don't have to worry about it. But over in Britain and Europe, they don't have as big of a land mass to grow food like this, so they have to rely on other countries to help them. And that's where another problem can come from, is with food shortages, another country pulls out of a deal, so you don't have food anymore.
So there's no reason for anybody to be hungry in the United States.
Well, now here in the United States, now there are the people who that are homeless. They have a harder time affording this food, but for the most part, especially up where I live, there's a lot of food drives for them. There's a lot of almost all the homeless people up here are very well fed. So,
okay.
But up here, I'm not sure how it is down in Bakersfield because I don't go down there often. But up here, everyone at least is well fed and eats.
Well, I think we've been reading the One Book, One Bakersfield, $2 a day, living on practically nothing in America. And the statistics from that book are pretty staggering. The amount of people who live below the poverty level, and because they live below the poverty level, when you figure out all of the resources that they get, like SNAP and all of these other things, 40% of Americans have to live on $2 or less a day to feed themselves. When it comes to that, the products that are high fructose corn syrup start to become the cheaper food to purchase. So who do you think would bring up the fact that the food that is cheapest is the one that's not good for you?
I would probably say that would have to be David Barboza in his article. If you pitch it and they'll eat it, because as you said, a lot of fast foods aren't healthy by the way they are prepared or what they use to prepare them.
So how do you reconcile all of that? What would be your claim to make about the production of corn or the overproduction of corn? How are you viewing it?
I'm viewing it as I was never aware of this, but now that I am aware of this, my family also, not just me, are shopping different, and we're looking at different ways that we can avoid stuff like high fructose corn syrup and stuff like that.
Okay. Do you think that there needs to be any policies implemented based on any of the information from the articles?
I believe it depends on the school district. Now, some school districts that are in smaller places, they tend to have healthier areas or healthier school stuff. But when you get into places like the big city, like in where was it saying? I believe New Jersey or something like that. They had like Pizza Friday and KFC Thursday, stuff like that. It, in my opinion, should not be allowed. Now, if the kids are able to afford a vehicle and they can have their off campus, that they can do what they want then, because they're able to leave campus, they can go where they want to get their food. They could choose to go to Subway and get a healthier sandwich, or they could choose to go to like a McDonald's and get a hamburger. I believe personally that fast food shouldn't be allowed in high schools. Now, a soda every once in a while isn't bad in my opinion, but when it comes down to fast foods in any schools or marketing directly at children or youth, I think it shouldn't be allowed because it's directed at an audience that can be easily misled.
Okay. Who might disagree with you?
Like in the articles or just like people out
With
in
what
the
you
world?
just said. So you would like to see a ban of all fast foods from school sites, and the providing only healthy choices at the lunches, unless the students are old enough to be off campus, and then they can go choose what they would like for lunch. Who might
Yeah.
disagree?
Well, I think quite a few students would disagree with me, but I think the way they should go around deciding whether there should be a ban by school district is the school district, like for instance, Kern County School District, Kern High School District, all the students, they have them do a physical fitness test. You have to take it every year in PE. When you're in PE, they make you run a mile in a certain amount of time. You have to be able to do so many push-ups, sit-ups, pull-ups. They do a BMI test on you. And by that, they do that to every single student. And if there's a real problem with out of shape or obese people, that there should be a ban on it in that school district. So I think it would vary from school district to school district. Some places are healthier than others just by their guidelines set by their school district.
Now, Mr. Short, you have children, right?
Yes, I do.
What do you think of what Luke just said? How would you respond as a parent?
Well, I'm in a little different situation personally because my children are homeschooled. But when it comes to public school, I agree with Luke. I think that there should be more of an emphasis on healthy whole foods, and they should be getting rid of foods that contain things like high fructose corn syrup and other artificial sweeteners, and like the greasy pizza you mentioned earlier.
So, Luke, what information would you need to make available to people if you were to write out this argument of policy? Because that's basically what you would be doing. What kind of information would you want to make available to people in order for them to agree with you?
Well, first, as I said, varying on the school district, as for instance, since we're in a Kern High School district, I'd be using this one. I would go on to Kern High School district and I would look at the rate of out of shape uh, or obese rate compared to the physically fit people. And if it's a much heavier weight difference, like let's say one is 65, 68%, the other one's only 40, then there's a bit of a problem going on there because that's telling me that there's too many people on eating healthy and they're not willing to do exercise in order to stay in shape or be healthy. So by doing that, I would make a list. I'd go to like the food resource pages, like I believe it's McDonald's or Subway. They have a food chart that says like what everything, like how much calories in this, what's in it, and I would do that. And I'd do that for places that have fast food restaurants in their schools, and I'd show them what is in the food and what causes stuff like obesity. And that's how I would propose my argument, at least. I'm not sure what other people would do. It just kind of, I guess, would vary depending on the person making the argument and how they prepared their presentation.
Right. Well, since you're the only one here, we get to talk about you. Good. So, and that's the whole point of what we're doing in these modules is we're hoping to get you to see how an argument is built, what you need to support that argument, and how you persuade others to believe what you're saying. Mr. Short, before we move to the actual writing topic, were there any questions you wanted to ask Luke?
No questions, but I think Luke is very perceptive, and I noticed in the Pollen article that there is more than a coincidence in the fact that in the 1980s there was a switch to corn sweeteners, and that was when the obesity epidemic and type 2 diabetes epidemic in this country began to rear its ugly head. So I just wanted to state that the comments that Luke made earlier about when crop becomes king and the artificial sweeteners is right on.
Yeah. Good. Okay, so here's here's what the writing task is. Now, the first part is always the setup. It's the second part where you actually see what the task is, but this is what you will be seeing when you get to the writing task. Food is an essential part of the human experience. It is necessary for life. It is a key ingredient of culture. A government that cannot feed its people is not a good government. People make individual choices about what to eat and how to prepare it. But governments also make policies that control and influence the type, abundance, and quality of food. A balanced diet can make us healthy, while eating a limited diet of one or two types of food, even if the food is high quality, can make us sick. Food can appear to be healthy, but contain pesticides, contaminants, or dangerous bacteria. We make personal choices about food, but our choices are influenced by advertising and government policies. For example, Wendell wants us to become more aware and involved in the food we eat. He wants us to ask questions and make personal choices. Michael Pollan discusses the unintended consequences of massive government subsidies on the price and availability of corn. His argument is a policy argument. David Barboza discusses the influence of advertising on the food we desire. He is interested in how advertising influences our personal choices. Although Jay Rayner does not mention Wendell Berry by name, he clearly thinks that if everyone made the personal choices that Berry recommends, it would lead to food that was too expensive for most people to buy with dire social consequences. Now we get to the actual task. Taking the statement you wrote in this discussion, explaining with which author you agree with the most as a starting point, and taking the arguments and evidence of all four authors into account, choose one of the following writing tasks. You can write a personal view. So this is actually an argument of judgment. Is there a problem?
Nope.
In response, in you don't have to answer yet. In response to the 4 articles you read in this module, write an essay in which you state your own personal preferences regarding food, and in this paper describe the main criteria by which you will make decisions about food. Discuss what kinds of food you will buy for yourself and your family members, where you will buy it, and how you will prepare it. In addition to references to one or more of the 4 articles, support your food plan with logical arguments and evidence. Or we can do the policy view. So this is an argument of policy. In response to the 4 articles you read in this module, what should policymakers, such as politicians, school boards, food safety experts, do to make the food supply healthy and more affordable? You might discuss such issues as food labeling, agricultural subsidies, nutritional education, food inspections, and regulations. You might also discuss whether certain types of unhealthy food should be banned from stores, restaurants, or schools. Write an essay in which you describe a policy or a plan that would improve our food supply or the health of the population. In addition to references to one or more of the 4 articles, support your plan with logical arguments and evidence. So, questions, Luke, about what you're being asked to do?
Yeah, how big of an essay do I have to do?
Do you want to take this one, Mr. Short?
Sure. That's kind of a difficult question, because some students can do a great job in 4 paragraphs. Some students may require more paragraphs than 4. My general rule is that it needs to be at least 4 well-developed paragraphs. Basically, the idea is that you're going to set up your essay in the introduction paragraph. You're going to mention the points that you're going to discuss in the intro, and then have one body paragraph for each of those points that you've mentioned in the intro. So whether your essay is 4 paragraphs in length, discussing 2 major points, 1 in each body paragraph, or your essay is 6 paragraphs in length, discussing 4 major points, 1 in each body paragraph. You have to decide that for yourself, but I personally would like to see no fewer than 4 strong, well-developed paragraphs. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because up at our school up here, our average essay size is 5 to 8 paragraphs. So I was just wondering if you guys had different requirements or not.
Well, I think that the size of the essay is important, but it's not as important as the quality of the essay.
Whoa, who's got a motorcycle driving through the room?
We were right next to the street, our building, and there's a couple of Harleys that just went by.
Oh, that's okay. I totally agree with Mr. Short. So for my students listening, I definitely want to ditto his response. The point that I think is really important, and I do have those videos in the resources section about what I look for in the rubric. It has to do with the elements of the rubric rather than length. So when you have a claim, you have to make sure that you, first of all, present the evidence that led you to make the claim, and then support why what you are proposing is going to help solve the problem. That's particularly in the argument of policy. For those who choose to do the personal view, it's still kind of in a way policy, but it's your own policy. If you decide, after reading all of this, I have decided that red meat just really isn't healthy for me, then you will present the evidence of why you're making this decision, and then how you're going to go about changing what you do. But it all has to do with how well you structure the topic sentence, your evidence, your support of that. That's actually called the warrant. The warrant is connecting the evidence to your claim. And that's where all the magic happens. And if it takes you 5 sentences, if it takes you 10 sentences, it really does have a lot to do with your writing style. So we're more concerned with how you support your arguments and how clear your arguments are. And have you considered what somebody who would be against you, what they would say and how you would respond to them in a nice way? I don't know about you, Mr. Short, but I was getting some that were saying, well, if they don't agree with me, that just means that they're dumb. That's not what you're supposed to do.
Right.
How would people disagree with you? And then how would you respond to those people?
Yeah, we don't need any ad hominem attacks on people.
No, definitely not. Okay. Any other questions, Luke?
No, I think that's about it.
Okay. Anything you wanted to add, Mr. Short?
No, I think you've covered everything very well, Mrs. Campbell. And Luke, I appreciate the depth to which you've studied the material. You clearly understand all of it. And I greatly appreciate that. And thank you for your input.
Yeah. Yeah, I found these articles pretty interesting myself. After I was done reading quite a few of them, I went online and did a bit of research here and there. And I was just pretty much figuring out like what we can do here and there, depending on the article and how they explained it, what we can do as people in our own decisions to make better decisions and eat healthier and make better choices.
Great. I'm glad to hear that.
Great.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Short and Luke. And I will be posting the first seminar very soon. And Mr. Short, I will send you the link to that so you can post it as well.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Campbell. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. All right. Go ahead.
One more question. When will this writing assignment be due?
I don't have that in front of me. Do you, Mr. Short? Usually what happens is you have the seminar today. Tomorrow you start it, so it would be the next day. I think the due date may be Friday. Now, for my students, I actually stretch it through the weekend. I allow students to have the weekend. So technically for my students, I think, and I hope I'm right about this, I don't have it in front of me, it would be Sunday at 11:59 p.m. so that Canvas can assign the peer review. Do you have that set up similarly, Mr. Short?
Yes, I do, but I'm like you. I'm not quite clear on the dates right now because I don't have them in front of me.
Oh, I got my calendar up. I'm seeing something about composing a draft on the 25th, the Monday next week.
Right.
Great.
Yeah. So it'll show up as started, and then you have there's going to be a few lessons in there that kind of help take you through the process of writing it, and then it's actually due at the 11:59, because I think I've got on mine it's set to send peer reviews Monday morning at 5 a.m. So I think that's how it's set up.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, we'll go ahead and close this off. And thank you again for your participation, Luke.
Yeah. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.